everybody. It's Alumni Weekend in Huntsville, Alabama, and I'd like to welcome you to the first one that we've had in a couple years because of COVID. We are doing 2 streams this year. One is virtual, the other is in person. We're not sure how many people are going to show up, but we're glad that you're here. If you follow my blog, a couple weeks ago, I did an article about faith in historically Black colleges and universities. And I'm not even sure what prompted me to do it, but as I was doing the research for the article, I was reminded that most historically Black colleges and universities began after slavery because Black folk who had been enslaved for a long time did not have the right nor the access to be able to read and to write. And so when they were freed, there were people who really cared and were concerned for their well-being, and they began to start schools that would teach them how to read. And many of the schools that were started were the forerunners of historically Black colleges and universities, and they were connected to churches or people of faith. And as I thought about that, I thought of my own HBCU, Oakwood. I went to Oakwood College, which is now Oakwood University, that started in 1896 and is one of the institutions that has continued to keep Christ at the center of what we do. A lot of the institutions, my husband is a graduate of Tuskegee University. We had some patients yesterday who are from FAMU. We know a lot of other people, Howard University, where other people have gone to school. And then when I was in Atlanta working at Morehouse School of Medicine at the Interdenominational Theological Center, the whole focus of that was religion and spirituality. Not all the schools have continued that, but any place that you go where there are Black people that are a part of it, literally, Jesus is going to be in the middle of it. And here at Oakwood University, what we do is we have what's called a Christ-centered curriculum. And we are not just teaching what we espouse as a denomination, but we are teaching people how to incorporate Christ in what they do. And so a lot of our graduates leave here and they become ministers or they become teachers and they teach in schools that are faith-based, but a lot others of us go into fields unrelated to that. And what we carry with us is the mission of Christ, who was out to help people and to heal people. And as I thought about that, I'm like, well, I think I want to connect with that and to my own university. And as I thought about it being a Christ-centered curriculum here, we also are the only vegetarian historically Black college or university. And in the times that we're living in now, if you haven't heard of Tabitha Brown, I don't know where y'all been, because she's everywhere. And I was on another thread with some friends of mine, and they were talking about Tabitha and how a lot of what she talks about, those of us who graduated from Oakwood University are familiar with. And if you graduated from an HBCU, you also know that God is the creator, that we did not evolve, and that he has a specific way for us to live. If you don't know it by now, I'm Donna Green-Goodman. I'm a public health educator. I'm a graduate of Oakwood University, class of 1981. I've had a career that God shaped for me, and I have been able to share with a lot of people things that you can do to improve your health. As we were preparing for this alumni homecoming, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and she's like, Donna, I'm working on this alumni thing, and I'm not seeing a whole lot about health. And I'm concerned about that because I started this fast in January, and it went so well for me. I did it for 40 days, 21 days, and then I did another 21 days, and I'm feeling so much better. And we're losing so many people who are dying before they're supposed to die. And we need to do something about that. Would you be willing to do something? And I'm like, well, I don't really want to, but because you're asking me, I'm going to do it. And the reason that I decided to do this was because I agree with what she's saying. The Bible says that we're given 70 years and 10. 70 years and 10. And so many of us, my father included, I've lived now longer. I'm 63 and I've lived longer than my daddy lived. My brother died at 39. My mother died at 69. There's no way that that should have to happen because that's not what the Creator said that we should do. As I talked to my girlfriend, what we were interested in, literally, was how in the world we could make something practical for people who were interested in making lifestyle changes. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It's also Minority Health Awareness Month, and I've done some things about that. But my concern with minority health awareness is that we make everybody aware, but then we don't tell them what to do or show them how to do it. And I think that if we are empowered to do it from the place of faith and science, which I believe is one and the same, then we can make a difference. I had an interest in health and nutrition while I was a student at Oakwood University. I was dating a guy who is now a physician. My absolute best friend in the world was pre-med, and I hung out in the science building with a lot of them. I had done chemistry in academy with Dr. Emerson Cooper. We got to college. He's teaching me again. I couldn't get far enough away from it, but I was drawn to home economics nutrition, and my then counselor, Dr. Ruth Faye Davis, wanted me to be a dietitian. I did not want to go in the hospital to help people get better. That wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to be out like I'm doing now. And so I chose to major in home ec, minor in foods and nutrition, but I still had to take chemistry. And I needed 2 classes that the department didn't offer. So I was able to take 2 classes from Dr. Ephraim Gwebu. Some of you may remember him. And Dr. Gwebu taught this nutritional biochemistry class. And for the first time in my life, I'm sitting in chemistry and it made sense to me because he's talking to me about what happens to you when you eat an apple versus you just talking about the Krebs cycle. And I could make the connection then between what I was eating and the potential outcome of it. In addition to that, I took another course from him that literally was measuring how quickly our students' blood was clotting. So we would take their blood, centrifuge it down, and then run it through this machine. And all of the meat eaters' blood clotted more quickly than the vegetarians or the vegans. And I'm talking, this was 1980, 1981. And so I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I kind of just tucked that in my head. Then I went to Loma Linda, which is home of the Adventist Health Study, to get my master's degree. And while there, I was introduced in public health to this study by Breslow and Belloc. And they talked about a number of behaviors that when people make them, they literally have better health. And as they were sharing that list to me, it sounded really familiar. It sounded like what I had learned at Oakwood in this course that we all have to take called Health Principles, where we learn about exercise and water and sunlight and fresh air and the value of a plant-based diet and not being intemperate and all those things. And I'm thinking, well, this sounds really familiar. How could that be? Because up until then, I'm thinking that God is over here and science is over there. But as I continue to study for myself, I'm convinced that God is science. And all of us are looking at this scientific information, but we're coming from a different perspective. Those of us who are creation oriented are looking at it through the eyes of God. And those of us who believe in evolution are looking to find out information that they can utilize in the way that they live. And I thought, okay, so if God is science, then all the things that we're studying about in science have reasons for the reason that they exist and good outcomes. And it's the way God intended. And so when you talk to people about it, it's like they have this moment where they can't, one of our patients is here now, and who God really has blessed, and as they have made other choices. And he told me in his church, it was going to be a stretch because of some of the beliefs that his church members had about healing and that sort of thing, and certain foods that is okay to eat versus not okay to eat. And I think for the last couple of years, a lot of us have been in a place where we literally have begun to re-explore some things about our health from the perspective of heaven, and decolonize some of the things that we have been taught, because it's clear when God says that I wish above all things that you prosper and be in good health, he wants you to have it. When he was on earth and he went through the city and he was just healing everybody, they got healed. In the Old Testament, when you look at how he fed the children of Israel for 40 years, they ate manna and quail for 40 years and nobody got sick. Up until the flood, you barely see sickness. Sickness didn't even start until meat was introduced to our dietary. And so I'm putting all this in my head and I'm thinking, what in the world? How do I explain this? How do I get people to understand it? That God is science and God created science. And it's kind of like those of us who are here for homecoming, you're an Oakwoodite. Ain't no doubt about it, right? So if I come up on you, you should be able to tell me about Oakwood. Well, if God created everything, why is he confused about how to keep us well? It just doesn't make sense. And when he made Adam and Eve, he gave them specific things that they were supposed to do. And when we do those things, then we can have good health. So how did this affect me personally? In 1996, I got the call that I had invasive, aggressive, metastatic breast cancer. I was 37 years old. I thought I had been doing everything that I was supposed to do. I had been working at Morehouse School of Medicine in a program teaching people how not to get cancer. Then I went to the Office of Nutrition to teach people around the state how to live healthier. Following a lump in my breast, went to the doctor, let's do a baseline, found out that it was not just cancer, but invasive, aggressive, metastatic breast cancer with only 2 to 5 years to live, and told that I needed to do chemotherapy, stem cell transplant, more chemotherapy, radiation, and tamoxifen. Because of my training at this HBCU, because of my training at Loma and my relationship with God, I was not happy. I wanted to see what else I could possibly do to make a difference here. And nobody wanted to listen to me. So I did what most HBCUers do. You go in that closet, wherever your closet is, and you start talking to the creator about what in the world is going on here, because I don't want to do this stuff not because I dislike what they're offering me, but because I know there's something better that's not going to be as harmful for me. And as I prayed, the Lord directed me, and I ended up at Wildwood Lifestyle Center and Hospital, where I stayed for 10 days. And while I was there, what was amazing to me was the science behind lifestyle choice when it comes to making these decisions. And what we're going to do today is talk about that. I have gathered a group of my friends who are alum of Oakwood University: Dr. Columbus Batiste, Dr. Ruby Latham, Dr. Faith Felder, Eddie Goodman, physical therapist, and Dr. Eric Walsh. And all of them are practicing healthy lifestyle according to God's science. And everybody in the world now is listening to it. And the beauty to me of this is it literally is how you can not just prevent disease, but reverse disease. And then once the disease is reversed, you then have the ability and the unction by God to go and tell somebody else about how they can improve the way they live, because the miracles that Jesus did back when he was on earth were just this big compared to what he said we're going to be able to do. And if we're looking at Minority Health Awareness Month and talking about the health of our people, I love everybody, but my people means something to me, because all of these critical chronic lifestyle diseases took my entire family away. They started dying in 97. The last death was 2006. So like every 4.5, 5 years, I lost another family member to a preventable disease. And so when I got the breast cancer, I'm starting to make some changes and some choices, and I'm going to share that with you in a moment. But the other thing that I want to say to you before we get into this, each of the presenters today are going to talk to you about their area of specialty and practical ways that you can make improvements in your life, and how you can share this with others, and how easy it is. When we talk to Dr. Ruby, she had a similar diagnosis, and here we are years later about the business. And that's what I think we should be about. One of the things that my parents did when they were students here at Oakwood was to literally have a vegetarian sub shop. So for those of you who have joined us in person, are in the VIP list, what you see in front of me is what they have for lunch. Y'all know my parents used to have this store with all this delicious food. So today, all of our guests got lunch on us today, and we are serving them 4 options for sandwiches: a cold sub, a pocket full of stuff, my daddy used to call it, a barbecue sandwich, and an Italian meatball sandwich, along with some salads. And those who are here have the recipes for that, and I'll put that in an email to those of you who registered online. There's homemade cookies, there's plant fruit juice and water that you can also have, because one of the things that we like to do at our clinic is show people how to make the lifestyle changes. It's one thing for me to tell you, but how in the world I'm gonna go home for Easter? I had one patient who is a cancer patient, and I got to talk to him right before Thanksgiving. He looked me in my eye. He said, "Miss Donna, I'm gonna tell you, I want to do this, but I can't do it until after Thanksgiving." And I'm like, well, our sister understands, because I know that for is cultural and relational, and we're going to support you in that. And when you're ready to make these other changes, we want you to do it. So if you could put your eyes up for me, one of the things that I learned as I was walking my way through breast cancer, next one, is that the simple remedies and behaviors that we are often encouraged to do can make a difference. In addition to the breast cancer, I also had a history of fibrocystic breast disease, fibroids in my uterus, horrible periods, overweight, constipation, a whole bunch of other stuff. Didn't even know if I'd be able to get pregnant because there was so much bleeding. Next slide. And what I discovered was what Breslow and Brellock said, and what I learned here at this HBCU, and many of us who are HBCU grads, and if you're from an HBCU, put your HBCU in the chat so we can shout you out. What you learn, God says. And I discovered that part of the reason it's important to go to bed is that when it comes to breast cancer, your tumors are more aggressive if you don't get good sleep. Sleep is before 9:30 at night, every night, because that's when your body is repairing itself. And the recurrence is higher in women who aren't getting sleep. So Donna started taking her behind to bed. The other thing is exercise. You literally lower the estrogen levels in your body when you are getting exercise. It's not willy-nilly. One of the participants today is my good friend, Dr. Jacqueline Sylvester. When she walked in, we're like, okay, what did you do? And what she has done, and this is what I did at Wildwood, when you eat your meal, walk for 20 minutes so that the sugars that you're eating, your muscle and not onto your butt. And then the weight goes down and you're a lot more healthier. And that's how she was able to do it. So I started exercising and I came out of the gym to go outside in the fresh air and sunlight. Next slide. Then what about sunlight? This was the one that was so amazing to me because Black people are worried about when I get out there in the sun, what's going to happen to me? God's going to heal you. Don't believe the Eurocentric approach to this. When you are living the way that the creator of science wants you to live, literally your body makeup is different. And when you sit out in the sun, and as we have come through COVID, we have begun to understand how vital vitamin D is to the body's immune system, right? Well, when it comes to cancer, if you have tumors, the sun hits your skin and it shrinks the tumors. It creates vitamin D. It lowers your blood cholesterol. It does so many amazing things just by sitting out in the sun. And this, of course, is responsible sun exposure. And what they say is, well, if you're Black, then you got to sit out there longer. Well, praise Jesus for making me Black. Because if I'm Black, I get to sit out there longer. And when you think about our history in this country, we were out in the fields forever and ever. And what we did not die from back then was cancer like we have today. So getting that sunlight was very important. Being outside in the fresh air, of course, is vital. We understand that people are sicker when they're in the cities and in smog-infested areas. So making sure you do that. And there's something now in the Asian population called nature bathing, where they measure levels prior to someone sitting outside, and then they sit them outside, and then they come back and measure the levels, and everything has improved within like 30, 45 minutes of just being outside, because God is the creator of science. Next one. The other thing, of course, for me, which was the greatest interest, was the plant-powered diet. I had been lacto-ovo vegetarian, and as Oakwood is the only vegetarian HBCU campus, we espoused a vegetarian diet. But when I was here 40 years ago, all of the data said that you needed to supplement. If you're not going to eat meat, then you need to eat eggs, and you need to do milk, and you need to combine foods. Well, what they've discovered is you don't have to do that, because the creator God put everything that you need in the foods in the proportions that you need. And it is true that animal products have a higher amount percentage-wise of amino acids, but it's way more than our body needs. And that protein really does a lot of damage to the body. The other thing that was so inspiring to me was I discovered a study that was being done by the American Cancer Society. And this guy was identifying from folklore. A lot of Black and brown people believe in going outside and getting an herb or drinking some water or something like that. And what we've discovered is that inside of all of the food, aside from carbohydrates and vitamins and minerals and that sort of stuff, there are literally something called phytochemicals that we did not realize were there, that have no nutritive value, but they can save your life. And they've done a number of studies, one of which actually got an award. 500 genes were changed in people that they put on a plant-based diet. And in the African population, they did a study comparing Africans and African Americans. They studied the Africans. There was no evidence of colon cancer. They looked at the Africans, colon full of it. They switched their diets for 10 days, kind of like Daniel and those 3 Hebrew boys. And for those of you who are scientists, that to me was one of those first studies in the Bible where you had a control group and an intervention group, and you discovered by doing this intervention what the outcome was going to be. They switched the diet in these Black people for 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, the Africans now had symptoms of colon cancer. The African Americans no longer had it. In as little as 10 days, you can change your gut biome. And there's so much more scientific information that the non-creation scientists are beginning to confirm in their studies that will explain why God said what to do in the first place. Then, of course, there's the Adventist Health Study at Loma University, which a lot of people use as their foundation to getting information and making changes for themselves. When I was in graduate school at Loma, my best friend was involved in gathering that data. And very recently, they have done another one, phase 2, that included African Americans who were in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And those people, literally, those people were the healthiest of all the Seventh-day Adventists that they studied. The Black people who were Seventh-day Adventists were healthier than the rest of them who were Seventh-day Adventists. That says something to me. And of course, you're familiar with Muslims and their dietary laws, and Mormons and their dietary laws, and Buddhists and their dietary laws. And that improvement weighs out tremendously for people who follow that. Next one, please. The other thing that I discovered was stress. And a lot of times we go first to diet, but they're beginning to see that the stress that you face can kill you. And if you think about the last 2 years that we have lived through, we literally have been stressed to the max. And some of us have just decided I can't do it. Some of us have taken our lives. Some of us are still grieving. And we're discovering how being stressed can change the body's systems so that you are at greater risk for getting illness. And the studies are clear. The other one that I discovered was the use of water and hydrotherapy. And we know about drinking. We've got juice here, but water today and how important that is. But in my own life, and my husband's going to speak to some more of that later today, the use of hydrotherapy, which is water therapy on the outside of the body, manipulates the body's systems. And in my own case, when I refused chemotherapy, I found a study that was being done by some Oxford professors, and John Harvey Kellogg of the Kellogg family did the same thing. But artificially induced fever is one of the best ways to fight disease. So putting my body in hot water triggered my body to start a fever, to send out white blood cells so that the white blood cells could then kill the stuff that's not supposed to be there. And you think about Big Mama's house. I remember at my own daddy's grandma's house, when she come home from work, she'd sit in that chair and somebody would have a basin right there for her to put her feet in. And she's putting it in there because her feet are hurting. But when you put your feet in that basin of warm water, it's dilating your blood vessels, so your blood pressure comes down. Your headache stops. The congestion that you may have in your abdomen is lessened because that's the way the Creator God decided it to do. Next one, please. And finally, the one that, of course, was the reason that I chose the route that I went was the value of yielding to divine power. And there's so much more information now about prayer and worship, service to others, meditation. One thing that really blew my mind was Greg Anderson, who was a cancer recovery specialist, and this is connected to stress and anger. God says to forgive others. It is not about what they did to you. It's about how what they did to you affects you. And when you can let go of stuff, then you feel better. And this scientist discovered with his patients who literally had tumors that were growing, when he started talking to them, he discovered that they were angry, that they were stressed about stuff, and especially needed to forgive. And when he could coach them to forgiveness, the tumors shrank and went away. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. Don't let anybody else tell you any different than that. And any science that you're looking at, try to look at it through the eyes of the Creator. Next one, please. I have had the privilege of working with my husband for the last 7 years here in Huntsville at our facility, where those of you who are live are with us. And what he provides is physical therapy, and I do health and wellness coaching, and we have just had an amazing time. I know that some of our patients have been blessed, but you don't know, when we go home and talk and pray, we're thanking God for how he has blessed you. And it's not willy-nilly blessing. It's literally. One patient comes back here every 2 to 3 weeks with her records from her doctor that are showing the difference. We have patients who my husband's going to talk about who are scheduled for amputations, and the amputations are canceled because they did what the great physician said. And the thing about the great physician is he doesn't just want you to not have diabetes. He wants to make you whole. And we literally have limited medicine to just feeling better instead of being whole. And sometimes the healing doesn't come at the level where we can see each other. Sometimes the healing is an emotional healing, as my parents and brother experienced, and they will wake up healed, not knowing how much time has passed. And the next face that they will see will be the great physician. And so we're hoping that over the next 45 minutes or so, you get some really good information from our guests. Next slide. One of the things that I have been able to do was to write several books. They are available on our website. Our in-person guest got a gift copy today. The first one is about my experience. The second one goes with the cooking show. And the third one is an ebook for people who are unable to get the hard copy. I'm so thankful that we have this chance to be here today. I want you to sit back and enjoy yourself. I don't know that you'll enjoy it as much as those of us who are here, because we got a good lunch today. Y'all might be eating popcorn at the house. But we're going to eat some good stuff today. And I want you to enjoy it and prepare yourselves as the program continues to flow and we get a chance to listen to all of these other health professionals about what you can do. Put your HBCU in the chat. Please share this video with other people that can be blessed by it. And thanks for joining us for this amazing event. And I know that God is going to bless you for being here. Thank you so much.
Our world is fast-paced. Impressions, appeals, images. The average person is taking in 250 bits of information every second. Of course, the brain wants to shut it all down, and you put up resistance. And definitely don't hand me anything, okay? It's too much. So now, where does that leave you? Where does that leave you trying to give love to this world? How are you supposed to share love? How are you supposed to make sure that you are the hands and feet of Jesus? Do you have time for relationship building? Where's the exchange of ideas? How are you supposed to connect with people who are so different from you in this fast-paced environment? Yeah, it seems it's hard out here. And it feels like you're going to need a superpower to break through all this resistance and clutter. And so what we have done at Message is to make sure that we are available where the people are, on your mobile device, online on your website, through videos, through social media, and our digital magazine. Hopefully, we can break through the clutter. Because if Facebook has 10,000 levers, they say, to be able to access the innermost desires of the average user, all it takes is one person, one friend like you and me, powered by the Holy Spirit, to reach and touch that heart that is hurting. That's all it takes. So yes, Message is our superpower. The message is our superpower. It allows you to lean in silently, anonymously, seamlessly. Move alongside your friends, your family, your neighbors, until such time as the Holy Spirit powers you to give that message for transformation.
All right. Good morning. Good afternoon, Oakwood University. Happy alumni. It's a pleasure to be able to be here with you, although it's virtually. I wish I could be there with you in person, but I'm there in spirit. I am Columbus Batiste. I am an interventional cardiologist, and I was able to carve out a little bit of time right now in the midst of my day. And so I wanted to kind of get on board and share a little bit with you. I'm always about lifestyle. And so let's dive into things just here a bit, if you don't mind. So once again, you can find me. I'm of the class. First, let me let you know I'm graduated part of the class of 1994, Oakwood College, now university. And so I'm a proud member and graduate with many high esteemed individuals. And so it's an honor to be to share that distinction with them. But I come to you today as the Healthy Heart Doc, not as Dr. Batiste, not as Columbus Batiste, but as Healthy Heart Doc. And when I put on this mantle, I believe it's my charge to share with you the power that you can keep you from coming and seeing me, keep you from spending time with me here in the cath lab. And so one of the things that Donna brought forth to me is she said, listen, I want you to bring up information regarding Exodus 15:26. So let's start with that. It says, if you listen carefully to the Lord, your God, and do all that is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commandments and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. So the question that comes up immediately is, well, what precisely were these diseases that the Egyptians had? All right. And so what's so crazy about things, I love history. In a different time and era, I may have been a history professor, but, see, the researchers, the archaeologists, like the whole Indiana Jones, they went and they excavated these tombs. And what they found is in 2009, the researchers, they presented study results showing that Egyptian mummies, some 3,500 years old, had evidence of heart disease. Yes, heart disease, specifically atherosclerosis. So atherosclerosis is that hardening of the vessel. It's when that rubber garden hose kind of becomes stiff and rigid. It no longer is flexible. That's what atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis is. And you have this invagination of this plaque, this gummy, rubbery type substance that prevents flow down the vessels. Happens all throughout the body from the head to the toes. And so what they found is they said that this thickens the arterial walls, as I just mentioned, and that these pharaohs who died many, many years ago had evidence of atherosclerosis. And they went in and found this, essentially 9 of 16 had significant amounts there. So what were the diseases of the Egyptians? Well, part of it was indeed heart disease. And so as historians began the process of looking back at that time, what they found is they found that Egyptians, the elite, those who had achieved the success of graduating from Oakwood University, the University of the Pharaohs, who had gone and made plenty of money, that they decided that they wanted to eat like the Egyptians. They had lots of fatty meats from cattle, geese, and ducks, and plenty of salt. Those things that tempt our taste buds. And what they mentioned is they said atherosclerosis is ubiquitous among modern day humans, and despite differences in ancient and modern lifestyles, we found that it was rather common in ancient Egyptians of high socioeconomic status living as much as 3 millennia ago. And this was information that was conveyed by the University of Irvine clinical professor of cardiology at that time. And so when we look at our own demographics, when we look at people of African descent, we look at individuals who come from historically Black colleges and universities, what we find is that African Americans lead on a national scale as it relates to consumption of these fatty foods, of animal products, that whether or not we're speaking of fish or we're speaking of turkey, or especially if we're speaking of chicken. And pork. Now I know you good Adventists are not eating pork, but also beef were outpaced by people of Latin origin and Caucasians only in the area of beef. But there was an author some time ago that many of you may be familiar with, and what she wrote inside of Testimonies to the Church is she said animals are becoming more and more diseased, and it will not be long until animal food will be discarded as many besides Seventh-day Adventists. The Lord will teach many in all parts of the world to combine fruits, grains, and vegetables into foods that will sustain and not bring disease. Not bring disease. So what does the studies tell me? I am a physician. So as a physician, I'm in part, you could say, as sort of scientist. And so part of my job is to review the literature. And so when we begin the process of looking at studies, and this was done at the Journal of American Medical Association, I want to tell you, this isn't something that Batiste made up. This is something Batiste read. It's that the association of animal and plant protein intake with all-cause and cause-specific mortality was the title of that study. And what the authors concluded, they demonstrated, is that high animal protein, that means your chicken, that means your fish, that means your beef, that means all those things, was positively associated with increased cardiovascular mortality. That means your heart, that means your brain, strokes and heart attacks, heart failure. In high plant protein intake, that means your beans and legumes and nuts and seeds and vegetables, right? It said that it was inversely, which means it was associated with a lower all-cause mortality and cardiovascular mortality, especially among individuals with at least one lifestyle risk factor. That means, what's a lifestyle risk factor? Diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, right? Those are all things that are risk factors that are there. So as you begin the process of looking at this, there were indeed other studies too as well that showed this. And then another study of Journal of American Medical Association Internal Medicine, what they showed is the association between plant and animal protein intake, and once again, all-cause death, right? That's what mortality means. And it said when you replace just 3% of your energy, that means calories, from animal protein, that you say, you know what, I'm going to substitute out this piece of chicken, this piece of fish, this piece of turkey, right? That when you substitute out just a small amount, small efforts make huge benefits in your longevity. That's what's important. That's what these studies are really telling us. It was inversely associated with overall mortality, which meant it lowered your overall mortality. Your risk of decreased 10% in both men and women from cardiovascular disease, 11% lower risk in men and 12% lower risk in women. Substantial. It tells us considerably what's going on there as it relates when we begin this process. Other studies show, I want to present to you the facts. So it's not just what Batiste said. This is not just some sort of church bedside type, what your mom said or your beautician or the cousin said. This is something the doc told you that the doc read based on studies. And this shows that the association of major dietary protein sources with all-cause and cause-specific mortalities, another study. This one done out of the Journal of American Heart Association. And what they showed is that processed red meat, that means your sausages, that means your lunch meats, things like that, it increased your risk, right? 6% increased risk of all-cause mortality. Eggs, those of you like your eggs over easy, sunny side up, scrambled, extra cheese inside of it. It increased 14% all-cause risk of all-cause mortality. With unprocessed red meat, 12% risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, here's the thing. Eggs also increase 24% the risk of cardiovascular mortality. Dairy, all right, that milk and so forth, 11% higher risk of cardiovascular mortality. These things in eggs contributed to cancer. We know the impact in prostate cancer as well. But here's the thing, saints, 20% higher risk of dementia. What's important to us as we grow older, our health investment. How will we live out? How are we living a life of purpose? We have to understand and remember why we're living a life of purpose if we're apt to do so. Repeated studies tell us the same thing repeatedly over and over. Additional studies, when we substitute animal protein with plant protein, we indeed can lower our risk of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular mortality, dementia, when we begin this process by simply substituting out. When we substitute the red meat and the eggs or dairy products with nuts, I don't mean butter toffee peanuts. I don't mean chocolate covered peanuts. I mean raw. These things like this, that it's associated with lower all-cause mortality. This has been prescribed to us, not only in the Bible, but throughout the eons of time as it pertains to the benefit. It's not just about fat. It's not just about the animals. It's about the process of what happens inside of us. See, the thing is that we're actually comprised more of bacterial or viral DNA than we are actually of human DNA. That means that it's not, you don't have the DNA just of your mother and grandmother. You have the DNA of the viruses and the bacteria that also have been passed along the lines. All right. And so studies have shown that when you feed your gut microbiome, which is what that bacteria is called, right? You feed this whole area that we live symbiotically with. that it actually can predict disease. It can predict your mental mindset. And so when you feed it some of the animal products, when you feed it discontent, anger, lack of movement, that all of a sudden you're encouraging the bad bacteria. And these bad bacteria produce bad things. And one of the bad things they produce is called TMAO, trimethylamine N oxide. And what this does is it increases that atherosclerotic events. That atherosclerotic events is the same thing that we read about in terms of with the Egyptian mummies, atherosclerosis. This is really, truly one of the major ills. And the number one killer across the world is in atherosclerosis, fed by our lifestyle. This thing called gut microbiome is so important that even during this pandemic that we're on the tail end of, we're not out of it, but we're tail end of COVID and coronavirus. Study after study begins the process of telling us the power of nutrition in helping to increase the odds that we'll survive. This study showed, because the Egyptians also suffered with infectious disease, it told us that the individuals who ate a plant-predominant diet were less likely to succumb to severity of disease from COVID. Doesn't mean you can't be infected. It means you're less likely to develop severe disease. Studies showed that the gut microbiome, right, the bacteria, were more diverse in individuals who were not admitted to the ICU. Power in your lifestyle. Power. Now, for those of you saying, well, doc, I don't eat any of this meat. You're not talking to me. Well, so I have a slide for you, because what studies told us is that when we eat healthy plant-rich foods, what's healthy plant-rich foods? Foods that your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents would recognize. Fruits and vegetables, kale, arugula, beets and Brussels sprouts, beans, red beans, grains. These things are identifiable compared to those processed foods, those deep fried foods, those foods that you sit there and you get from that local spot that now is advertised. Seems like everything on TV is what? It's plant-based. That doesn't mean it's healthy. But when you begin the process of eating these burgers and French fries, I never forget my kid said to me, Dad, Oreo cookies are vegan, right? And they are. And so when you move from eating healthful plant-rich foods to unhealthy plant-rich foods, we see a separation, and you're more inclined to get heart disease when you're eating unhealthful plant-based foods, heart disease and cancers. But here's the catch. You actually, when you begin to eat all of these ultra-processed foods that are bad for you, even though they're labeled plant-based or vegetarian or vegan, you actually do worse than people eating animal products and eating plentiful amounts of fruits and vegetables. It's important about the quality of what you're eating becomes extremely important, because we're looking to make an investment in our health future, right? So here's the catch. All that fried food, that fried chick, that Impossible Burger that's grilled, that when you have this fast food, studies have shown that consuming fast food even once per week increases your risk of coming to see me as an interventional cardiologist by 20%, your risk of heart disease. If you have fast food 2 to 3 times per week, it increases your risk by 50%. 4 or more times, 80% increased risk by fast food consumption. How are you investing in your health future? These studies continue to tell us that this processed food, the sodas, sweet tea, the chips, the burgers, the fry pat burgers, right? The bagels, the pizza, all these things that each daily serving of ultra processed food. And you're like, Doc, well, what is ultra processed food? It melts in your mouth, not in your hands. You don't have to chew it. It's pre-chewed for you. If you get that piece of dinner roll and it melts in your mouth this upcoming Sabbath during Alumni Weekend, that's process. But I'll tell you, if you have to chew that piece of Ezekiel 9:4-9 bread and your jaws start to hurt, that's the bread for you. That's the bread of life, right? And so studies have told us that when you begin the process of eating this ultra processed food, it's associated with a 7% increased risk in heart cardiovascular events, 9%. Increased risk of heart cardiovascular events has been associated, all these things, with the degree and the amount that you begin to eat. So it's important in the investment. I'll tell you that it's what you do matters. And every once in a while, I'll see a patient, I have one today, where the surgeons can't do anything for you. The disease burden is so severe. And so there was a study done once some time ago. And this study back in the late 80s, it said it took those cast-offs, those individuals where docs said they can't do anything for you, called the Lifestyle Heart Trial performed by Dr. Dean Ornish. And what he did was he decided to put these patients on a New Start program. I'll tell you, right? He said, I want you to eat a whole food plant-based diet. He said, I want you to get off of smoking. I want you to get rid of some of that sugar. I want you to spend time in terms of meditation and prayer. I want you to spend some time moving more than sitting and exercising, right? And what he did was as he began this process of all these aspects, and you know what group social support is? That's church. That's church, folks. He said, I want you to go to church. And when he had these folks do this, what he found is that in the individuals who truly did it, they adopted the whole lifestyle. They adopted the blue zone lifestyle that's been restored, the black blue zone lifestyle. What they found is that their blood cholesterol began to decline. That all of a sudden their bad cholesterol began to shrink. That called lousy, LDL, began to shrink compared to those who didn't do it. He found that as a result, that all of a sudden there was less progression of this thing called atherosclerosis. He found that there was an intensified amount of regression that was there too as well, and overall symptoms resolved. I want to let you know today, as my time wraps up, that our challenge is important, that education of health principles was never more needed than it is now. This is by that author that many of you are familiar with, who wrote the book Ministry of Healing. Many transgress the laws of health through ignorance and their need for instruction, but the greater number know better than they do. They need to be impressed with the importance of making their knowledge a guide for life. It's so important. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. This alumni weekend, I want you to apply. I want you to do. And by doing so, you won't have to come and see me. Take care. Have a wonderful alumni weekend.
Hey y'all, we're back live and I'm at the table now with Ruby Lathan, Dr. Ruby Lathan. Dr. Ruby Lathan and I grew up. A lot of people come to Huntsville to go to college, but Dr. Ruby Lathan and I grew up here. So this is home for us. Yep. I went to the elementary school, we both went to the academy, and then she completed studies here, and you finished at UAH?
I finished at Oakwood, then UAH.
Went to UAH. Mm-hmm. And during the break, we were thinking between the two of us, we have 41 years of cancer survivorship by making some different choices. So I'm going to ask her some really interesting questions and hope that you'll be encouraged by what she says. And be sure to follow her on her social media pages, Dr. Ruby Lathan on Instagram, I follow Dr. Ruby Latham because I love all the pictures of good food that she puts up there. So tell me, what was your life like before your diagnosis?
It's a good question because, like a lot of people, right before the diagnosis, I was really busy. I was like overworked.
Okay.
And
what kind of work did you do?
Engineering. So my degrees are in computer science engineering. And I was actually trying to figure a way out of engineering because I didn't want to do it anymore, but I felt a little trapped because I have a PhD in engineering. So it's like, you spent 10 years in school, you might want to make this pay off. Right?
Yes.
So, and like a lot of people that I work with now, usually preceding a cancer diagnosis, there's a lot of stress and things like that. It's usually not, oh, I'm just completely happy and boom.
Right.
It's usually something that builds up. And so, so I was working in defense and just living an overworked, busy lifestyle, eating a lot of processed food.
What made you decide to make changes? The type of cancer that you had?
It was thyroid cancer.
Do you know what stage it was?
They didn't classify it at the time. They do now, but not back in 2007. It was just yes or no.
So you were in your 20s, late 20s?
30s.
Okay, yeah. We were both in our 30s. And for Black people, the screening tools for us are never set at the point when we need to be screened. We always get the disease prior to the baseline for when we're supposed to be screened. So how did you find out that you had thyroid cancer?
Through my doctor. I actually was fortunate to have a really good doctor who just kind of felt my thyroid and felt it bumpy like a couple years before. So we did an ultrasound and we were checking again and it felt like there were new things. So we did another ultrasound and compared. Some things looked new and like they shouldn't be there. So we did a biopsy and that's when I found out.
Okay. So
with thyroid cancer, there often aren't a lot of symptoms with that.
Okay. So before the diagnosis, being raised in this community, were you vegetarian?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay, so mostly vegetarian.
High dairy.
Yes.
Vegetarian.
And the reason that we did all the dairy was because they said we needed to do the dairy.
We were just substituting the meat with cheese, basically.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So then when you got the diagnosis like me, what in the world made you, what did they recommend for you to do?
Surgery, just to remove thyroid, and then to be on medication forever.
For the rest of your life? So there was no actual chemotherapy for it. Just take your thyroid and be on medication for the rest of your life.
Two options, either kill your thyroid with radiation, radioactive iodine, or the surgery, and they recommended the surgery.
And what did you do?
Neither of those options. So like you, I prayed, and my gut instinct said there's a better way. I've heard of other people healed from cancer before naturally. So I just started researching. I dropped everything, quit my job, and just started studying and said, I'm going to figure it out. And about 3 weeks after the diagnosis, I went to Yuchipan because I was like, we know how to heal. We have this information. Let me figure out what I need to do. So I went there and I came back and I changed my complete lifestyle and the way that I eat, stress, all of that. Stop using the microwave. I stopped eating processed food. It went from processed freezer stuff to a lot of green stuff. Learned how to start juicing, tons of different. So basically just learned how to use food as medicine. And then from there, I added a lot to it, but that's where I started.
Okay. So it's just amazing that you mentioned the point about how a lot of people are stressed before it. Every breast cancer person that I have met in 26 years, every single one of them has experienced either a traumatic event or they're under major stress or they're in a relationship with somebody who's crazy and they have intimate partner issues. I'm serious every single time.
I don't know anyone that I've worked with because now I'm a holistic nutritionist. I switched careers. Cancer gave me the courage to say, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do.
And walk in your car.
Yes. And so I was like, what would I do for free if I could? And it was helping other people. And so I just had faith that it would work itself out, just like having money while I quit worked itself out.
Right.
I was like, when you step out on faith, the doors open. And so, then I moved to DC and started a whole new career and said, I found the job that I wanted. I didn't apply for any others because I said, this is it. And working for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine.
Yes.
It's plant-based lifestyles as preventative medicine.
Right.
And they saw my passion, and I'd been studying for a year pretty much nonstop on nutrition because I was trying to heal myself. And so I started working with them. And so a lot of my story the power of faith and belief, because
Unrealistic.
because it's like I didn't have a degree to be a nutrition policy manager, director. I was a engineer, but when I looked at the qualifications for the job, I was like, I've done this for the last year. I know how to do this. And they saw that, and that kind of kicked off a new career and new training in nutrition, and just followed my passion.
So when you went back to your doctors,
Oh, well, the doctors were not cooperative at all. So my first endocrinologist was very negative. He said, initially, do what you want, come back in 3 months and have the surgery. Said, I'd never seen anyone heal naturally. So I said, fine. I came back 3 months, it was still there. And that's when he started pressuring me to do what he wanted to do and being very negative and saying I'm irresponsible and all of that. So long story short, I got a new doctor.
yes,
Because they work for us.
right. Like when you go shopping for shoes, you don't get the first pair.
I fired my doctor, got one who I said, this is what I'm doing. I just need to monitor. He was, reluctant but cooperative. And a year later, when we found out the cancer was gone because we did another biopsy, he wasn't that excited. You should still have the surgery. And I said, no. Let me get out of this office as quickly as possible.
So this is the first person I've met who made very similar decisions as I did. And when you got well and went back to the doctor, they were mad at you and wanted you 5 years for me. 5 years. We're doing the Peachtree Road Race and we ran into her. She's like, I want her to come back and do the chemotherapy after 5 years.
5 years.
5 years of being clean. And told me not to tell people that they can get better by making healthier choices.
People have told me that too, that it's irresponsible.
Yes.
And I said, what's irresponsible is when people come in and you do a watch and wait scenario. Let's watch, you don't have cancer yet, come back in a year, come back in 6 months, without telling them what you can do in the meantime. So basically, you're just waiting for the cancer to develop.
Right.
I was like, that's irresponsible, if not criminal.
Right.
So me telling people that you can heal with food that is natural, that has been done multiple times is a blessing.
Absolutely.
Far from irresponsible. And I was like, I think I care about myself than anybody else. So let me be my own guinea pig and see if this works.
Yes. So what are you doing now with this food, Dr. Ruby Lathan?
So I started as a nutritionist and health coach. So I work with a lot of people to help them heal naturally. And I did videos, I give them recipes, but the next step was, can you make it for me? I don't cook. So during the pandemic, we kicked off something I already had in the works, was our delivery service. Vegan, organic, whole food, no processed, all good things that I eat on a regular basis and in the DC area. And so now people can just order the food.
And they can go where to order the food? My
website, rubylathan.com. From there, the service is Ruby Red's Vegan, but you go to rubylathan.com. There's links for there. There's links for survival courses. There's links for my videos and tons of information.
Okay. If there was one thing that you could connect to your Oakwood experience and this experience that you've gone through that you could share with those of us who are watching, what would it be?
I would have to say it was the faith to know that I was going to be okay. That was the first thing. When I was on my way to one of my brothers called me and said, God said, you're going to be okay. And there's a reason for this. And that still makes me emotional because I hung on to that. I said, there is a reason for this. And I don't know what it is, but at the end of this, there's going to be
there will be glory after this.
Exactly.
There will be glory after
this. And so
this. Following
that intuition and gut instinct, Holy Spirit, just having that, when you have that gut instinct and intuition, you need to follow it. That is our God-given gift. That's that we all have direction. And when we are bumping up against people who are trying to throw doubt, you need to reject that.
Absolutely.
And go with your gut.
Absolutely. And God is the original scientist. Don't forget that. I'm so glad that we finally met. We're trying to get back on schedule because everybody else is talking. But Dr. Lathan's going to be with us for the rest of the morning here. So you can talk to her, those of you who are here. And of course, if you're watching us online, make sure that you go to her page, y'all, on Instagram. Them pictures going to make your mouth water. And in
Turkey, this weekend, my brother is doing things there. So you can come get our vegan Philly cheesesteak and BLT, all kind of stuff. So so just go to my website and Instagram, and you'll find all about that. So if you happen to know folks in Albuquerque, let them know.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Okay, HBCU alum, we talk about that faith again. Unrealistic faith in spite of the facts, because God, what he intends to do for you, because he's the one that's in charge. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Absolutely.
My blood pressure has been 120 over, I think, 60 something.
Okay.
And my heart rate is not going out of crazy.
Okay.
And I'm doing well. It's going to give me a shot every month for my anemia. They told me I was not qualified for it because my numbers went up.
Okay, say that again. You had to do what?
I had to drink in this Saturday, and I got back into my suit. I couldn't get in it before. This has been, y'all have been my stepping stone.
Hallelujah.
I don't care what nobody say, I tell them about y'all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Faith Ware Felder, Oakwood class of 1990. Truth be told, I didn't want to go to Oakwood. My mother made me go. But after a year, I left. And I came back my third year so I could graduate on time. I'm glad I did because I have been blessed to make incredible friends. Just to name a few, Dr. Jacqueline Sylvester, photographer Michelle Taylor, and Fire Chief Eric Johnson. Of course, the beauty of Oakwood is even folks not in your class become good friends, like health coach, nutritionist extraordinaire, Donna Green-Goodman. I think that sense of family and caring is what I've taken from Oakwood and try to incorporate in my practice here in Tampa, Florida. I am board certified in internal medicine and lifestyle medicine, and my mission has been no more drugs through lifestyle changes. It is difficult to change people's behavior. It takes a lot of time. It's so much easier just to give a pill. But easy doesn't necessarily mean better, especially when it comes to good health. So I take the time and encourage people to change. Sometimes people look at me like I'm crazy when I say things like, stop eating chicken. But because we're family, because they know I care, patients young and old will listen, and some will, after a while, try to change, like Erica, Albert, and Jarvis. Take a listen. I'm here with Erica, and she is starting my week off incredible. Yes. Across the board, weight, blood pressure, cholesterol, and sugar. All four came down.
Woo! I'm excited.
Incredible. And so how did you do it?
Listening to you, exercising and just walking, eating the right things, putting the right things in my mouth.
There you go. And it's only been, I met you in December?
Yes.
It's only been 4 months and a few weeks. This is incredible. I'm so proud of her.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. So I'm here with Albert, and we've been working really hard. I won't tell him how long.
No, don't tell him how long.
To try to get his cholesterol down, and he just blew me out of the water today. How'd you do it?
I did it from eating right, changing my diet tremendously, and eating the right veggies and reducing animal foods and drinking dairy-free products.
And what about drinking lots of water? Did you increase that too?
I drank a lot of water. I reduced coffee, caffeine, and I drank more water than I've ever drank in my life.
And how did you benefit? What have been the good results from changing your lifestyle?
I've lost tremendous amount of weight.
He looks great.
And I feel good. I sleep better at night, and I feel really good.
There you go. So he's sharing his story to help motivate you to do better. So he was next, and I'm looking forward to the next person who's going to motivate.
All right, you could be that champion as well.
There you go. I'm here with Jarvis, and he blew the record getting his cholesterol down. The bad cholesterol, he dropped it 46 points in 3 months. 3 months. I saw him 3 months ago. And his total, I think it was like 67 points it came down. Please tell folks how you made that happen.
Just changed my habits. Ate better, ate less meat, consumed less alcohol. And I didn't give up everything. I still ate my fish, ate my chicken every now and then. But I definitely picked up my exercise. That's a big thing, picked up my exercise. And before all that, definitely listen to what the lady had to say. Dr. Phil, to make sure I listen. My mom said, listen, I'm listening first. And put it into practice, and took advantage of it while I'm still here.
See, and I like his story. I'm sharing his story because he didn't give up everything, and his numbers still came down considerably. Yeah. But and I know he would have blown me away, knocked me off the chair if he had given up everything. Yeah. But he still did well, and so can you. And we're just here trying to inspire you.
Yes.
So who's next?
Who next? I got the
So I hope those patients have inspired you. And I have been really blessed to have some wonderful patients from all walks of life, including a number of pastors who are not Seventh-day Adventist. And I've been preaching a long time about how important it is to honor their temple by losing weight and getting their lifestyle diseases at least controlled, or better yet, reversed. Last week, one pastor made my heart very happy when he shared his own lifestyle changes and that he is talking with other pastors to motivate their congregations to exercise. But it's not just patients' physical health that concerns me, but also their state of mind. I would be the first to say I am not a mental health provider, but as a primary care physician, my patient's state of mind is just as important as their blood pressure numbers. Sometimes we have to change a blood pressure follow-up visit to a girl, tell me what is going on visit. And that is time well spent because your mental health affects your physical health. Last week, a patient joked that I should have a sofa in the exam room because we were dealing with emotional problems. And if there was space, I would, because sometimes folks just want someone to listen, which I do, and offer words of encouragement. I tell them and let them know that I'll be praying for them and often encourage them to connect with the great physician, an awesome stress reliever. There's a great talk by Dr. David Williams for the NAD's focus on restoring mental health you should watch on YouTube. He explains the link between your mental health and physical health beautifully. So if you want to have success like many of my patients have had in getting off of medications, losing weight, getting back to a normal blood pressure, and yes, even being on the road to reversing diabetes, then I invite you to be willing to make the changes you need to make in your lifestyle. And your body will not only thank you, but it will reward you. You will be rewarded like Erica and Albert and Jarvis with better health that will pay you dividends for years to come. And if you have a doctor that's not on board with getting off meds and helping you make changes, then, well, you might want to get a new one. I'm just saying, it's your life and your health that God blessed you with, not theirs. Otherwise, to paraphrase the good book in Jeremiah 46:11, in vain shall you use many medicines, for they will treat symptoms all day long. They'll treat the symptoms, but they will not cure. Let me leave you with this promise to hold on to. Believe in it, and hopefully you will choose to live by it. The great physician came so that you will have life and that you will have life more abundantly. Thank you.
Today's Wellness Wednesday, we're talking about peripheral neuropathy. It's a condition maybe some of you are dealing with right now. Public educator Donna Green-Goodman shows us how therapy may be the key to getting back on your feet. Pat Green works on her therapy at Lifestyle Therapeutix in Huntsville. She suffers from a condition that causes weakness and numbness in her hands and feet.
It's been bothering me for about 3 years, and so I'm finally doing something about it.
After a quick warm-up on the stationary bike, Pat moves to a towel exercise where she's working to restore feeling to her toes. That's then followed by hydrotherapy. She dips her legs in warm water, then immerses them in an ice-cold bath. Pat says she's making progress.
The numbness isn't as bad as it was. I can do my exercises now, and I'm hoping that I'm getting more feeling in the bottom.
May is Peripheral Neuropathy Awareness Month, the condition many people like Pat are working to overcome. Donna Green-Goodman and her husband Eddie help patients in their clinic who have been diagnosed.
It kind of feels like when it first starts, like if you've fallen asleep on your arm or laid on your arm and the arm has fallen asleep and your hand is real tingly, that's how their fingers and toes feel all the time.
Diabetics, AIDS patients, and people who've gone through cancer treatments are most vulnerable to neuropathy. And in a lot of cases, the limbs can't be saved. That's why Goodman says she tries to teach people with neuropathy that there are ways to overcome it.
Much of the medical treatment that is given is only to manage pain. But physical therapy is one of the things that is also recommended by physicians, because if a person can't feel the bottom of their feet, they're falling a lot and their gait is bad.
That brings us back to Pat, who says she's determined not to let neuropathy keep her off her feet.
I didn't want it to get to the point where I couldn't feel, because I'm single and I need to be able to drive. And so I said I better do something now before it gets too bad.
And to learn more about neuropathy, click on this story under the You Saw It section of WAFF. Stay with us, more news to come right after the break.
I'm going to need you to unmute, Doc.
All right, if we could get my slide presentation started up there. There we go, there we go. Let's go back to the beginning here. Let's see here. Can you take me back to the beginning? Here we go. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank that wonderful bride of mine, Ms. Donna Green-Goodman, for having this particular presentation. We have been excited about this day coming along. But basically, what you see is what you get. What happens with our hydrotherapy treatments in this clinic is nothing short of a miracle. Since blood travels throughout the body, affecting that blood flow in physiologically predictive ways can alter the healing process of the body in so many amazing ways. John Harvey Kellogg, in my opinion, is the greatest doctor that ever walked the earth, was considered the father of modern hydrotherapy. He was a master internal medication physician, which means that he knew exactly what was going on inside of your body. And he treated almost every single condition with some form of hydrotherapy with amazing success. Our bodies, you may not know this, if given the right environment, can heal themselves. When you scratch yourself, when you break a bone, when you've been smoking for years and you decide to stop smoking altogether, those lungs get back to where they look like they've never smoked before. That bone can heal without having to take a specific medication. And if we give our bodies what it needs, us being fearfully and wonderfully made, God can help us to heal these bodies without a problem. My educational journey, of course, was in SDA schools from the 1st to the 12th grade. And then I went to Andrews University for 1 year. And then I found myself at Oakwood University, where I met my beautiful wife again. We didn't spend any time together there, but God made sure that he got us back together. Then I went to Tuskegee, where I got my physical therapy degree. And it was there that I was trained to be able to do the hydrotherapy treatments that I'm doing right now. But it was only after 14 years of clinical education and experience that I realized that these particular treatments were going to be beneficial, because I saw what was going on with my wife with her cancer treatments. And I said, that should be able to be used in my clinical practice. Then a few years later, before we got the clinic going real good, I had a course that was given by UAB, University of Alabama. And that course was a health-focused patient care course that taught physical therapists and occupational therapists how we could best take care of something more than just hips, backs, and necks. They taught us how to work with diabetes and hypertension, cardiovascular disease, weight loss, and all those things. And it's not quackery or experimental strange medicine theories, but it's taking care of the temple of God in his methodology. So what I began to work with specifically was neuropathy, diabetic neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy. And that is the abnormal sensations in the lower extremities, which include burning and tingling and pins and needles and pain. Many patients have problems going to bed at night because they can't sleep because their feet hurt so bad. And if they get to sleep, those feet wake them up without a problem. They keep that going. And the main problem is that they have clogged blood vessels. So when we look at that, those 3 different types of peripheral neuropathy are what I specifically deal with: peripheral neuropathy, diabetic neuropathy, and then chemotherapy-induced neuropathy. I think it was mentioned earlier in the program that many of the drugs that they deal with for chemotherapy cause problems with damaging the nerves that are in those lower extremities. The conventional way to take care of peripheral neuropathy is with medications. We all know about that. We're talking about Neurontin, gabapentin, Lyrica, and then, of course, dealing with that cholesterol, we're looking at Lipitor and Crestor. And if that doesn't do it, of course, they're looking at those stents, putting stents in to be able to open up those blood vessels. And, of course, surgery is a last resort. And we have already learned that we can prevent people from having amputations just by getting that circulation back. So circulation is what we're looking at, addressing that clogging. And if you can see the artery on the left-hand side, that's my artery. It's clear because I'm not putting in anything that's going to cause my arteries to be clogged. But on the other side, we're talking about cholesterol and saturated fat being the culprit about causing those blood vessels to be clogged and not able to get that blood down there. How do we take care of that? We have a 2-pronged approach. One is, of course, and we're talking about diet. Diet is so important. I instruct my patients to increase their fruits and their vegetable intake. I also let them know that we can decrease that meat intake by 50%. We have to meet people where they are. We're not trying to make everybody vegetarian, but if you can decrease that meat intake by 50%, we're looking at you having 50% less cholesterol and saturated fat going into the body to clog those arteries. And of course, we encourage people to transition off of your dairy products, which are the main problem. The dairy, especially cheese, clogs the arteries faster than any single item that you would want to eat. So we want to improve that circulation. And how do we do that? We're looking at hydrotherapy. When we talk about hot water, warm water, that dilates those blood vessels. It draws the blood into the extremity that we're trying to work with, and it stimulates the immune system. Then we're looking at cold water. That constricts those arteries, and it causes the immune system to be stimulated also, but it pushes blood and fluids out of the extremity, that therefore decreasing the edema and the swelling, which causes their feet to go down and them to feel much, much better. So when we look at the different hydrotherapy treatments that I, as a physical therapist, perform, my wife already talked about the hypothermia, but then there's other ones, but the one that I use is called the contrast bath, where we have 2 extremity whirlpools. And that is what we do with that. We have their feet placed in warm water, and that causes the arteries to dilate, pushing blood into the extremity. And then we put it into cold water for a period of time, and that causes those same arteries to decrease in size. So when we go back and forth with 5 different cycles of that hot and that cold, it opens and closes, opens and closes. And when it does that, the muscles around the artery, they're getting exercise, because whenever you have a clogging on the inside, Dr. Batiste already mentioned that there's something called atherosclerosis that hardens the artery on the outside. So we have plaque on the inside, hard arteries on the outside, and this hydrotherapy gets those arteries moving back and forth in such a way that allows them to have significant improvement in their blood flow. Now, this is what many of the people who come to me have legs that look like. We can see how dark it is. We can see that there's disfiguring. These are the legs that we see on a consistent basis. Now, I didn't put in a picture that showed the after, but you can imagine going from that picture to having full circulation without a problem. So the contrast foot bath, once they begun this process and they begun to change their dietary habits, pain is decreased significantly, if not eliminated. Burning and tingling and pins and needles are usually gone. Ticklishness, now this is one that I had more recently been able to hear people say. When I first began to do slight massage on the ends of their feet at the beginning of the treatment protocol, they couldn't tell what was going on. But by the 3rd or the 4th week, when I began to massage their feet and they began to jump, I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, I can feel that. My feet are ticklish again." So their ticklishness begins to come back, and we're really excited for them to be able to have that situation. And many of the patients who come who have neuropathy can't feel the floor because their feet are numb. So they can't walk real well because their static and dynamic balance is problematic. And they come with walkers, they come with canes. And by the end of our 4 to 6 weeks of treatment, many of them have tossed those canes and walkers away, and they're not having to worry about that at all. In fact, a gentleman came in just on this past week, and he was walking with a very wide gait because he had poor circulation and poor sensation. After his first treatment, his legs were closer, he was walking more confidently, and we anticipate within the next couple of weeks for him to be doing very well. So we want to be able to make sure that we give people what they need. Heavenly hydrotherapy. In 2 Kings chapter 5, we hear the story about Naaman the leper who went down 7 times. It's through many forms of hydrotherapy that God heals those who need it. He is healing in biblical times, and at Lifestyle Therapeutix, Physical Therapy Wellness Center and Clinic, we are healing people today. Hey, I'm Andy Goodman from Lifestyle Therapeutix, Physical Therapy Wellness Center. We've been open for the last 5.5 years here in the Metro Huntsville area, and we talk to patients and we deal with patients in ways that they don't get at your other physical therapy clinics. There's about 35 other clinics, PT clinics here in the city of Huntsville, but none of them have the type of care that we provide. We provide one-on-one care, and we're concerned more about the part of the body or the disability that brings you to our clinic. We're concerned about the whole body. We're concerned about your wholeness. We're concerned about your complete health. And because we are a specialty wellness center, we recognize that diet and lifestyle are significant parts of your health and healing. They play a significant part in your health and healing. So we want to let you know that if you decide to come to our clinic, we're going to treat not just the hip, back, or neck, but we're going to treat the heart and the soul that you have, that you bring to us. If you have burning, tingling, and numbness in your feet, this is the place to come to get that to be relieved and many times reversed. So just give us a call at 256-704-2352 so that you can make an appointment and come to see us here at Lifestyle Therapeutix. Take care. We're looking to see you.
Hello, everyone, and good to be a part of this. I'm a very proud Oakwood alum and very honored to be a part of the program, especially since so many great speakers have already gone forward. I thoroughly enjoyed all of the talks. I seldom get to sit and listen, and I was really enlightened and inspired myself just listening to a lot of the talks. And my section, I want to really bring back to the reason we have a health message, the reason it's important for us to seek the healthy lifestyle that's been talked about so far in the program. And I think for a lot of us, we miss the ultimate reason. This isn't really as powerful as it is to reverse diseases. And I hope we all can be a part of that, if not for ourselves, in helping others if we don't have diseases to reverse. And as powerful as it is to lose weight or to look better, these things are very powerful, but none of them are of eternal import. In other words, one day our bodies will be glorified. And what we want to do is get to the point where we experience that. What the enemy of our souls wants to do is to put us in a place where we are trapped physically, because as was said earlier, our physical health is attached and connected to our mental health. And what we learn is that our salvation actually is what we call a supratentorial, a mental health problem. And so we are strongly and always looking for what is it that God is trying to do for us in order that we might attain that salvation and be able to one day escape this world. Now, the devil traps us. One of the things that's really powerful is that the devil traps us with stress. One of the things, if you hear me do my talks on our slavehood programs, or even when I go and speak, I don't have any big social media presence, anything like that. But you can look at me up on Audioverse, and I have a lot of stuff there. But one of the things that I find important is that to understand stress. And there's something I call the stress equation. And the stress equation lays out that stress equals demands minus resources. Stress equals demands minus resources. Well, what does that mean? That means the more demands put upon you, the more stress you're going to have based on the equation. As African Americans, Latinos, and other people of color, there can be a great bit of stress that others don't experience. Stressors of racism, stressors of economic issues, and on and on. So these stressors can do this. Then there are resources that help you to manage those stresses. If you have the wrong resources, you will never be able to beat stress. And I want to submit to you that one of the fundamental problems in America today is that people have all of the demands, but have the wrong resources. What are the resources that they use? They use caffeine to have energy. They use alcohol to de-stress. They use food to find pleasure. And I could go on and on. The devil gives you these false resources. And when you start to use the false resources, they can become habit forming. Right? Anything that changes your mood can be habit forming. And once you start to understand that habits build personality, habits build character, you start to understand how this is connected to salvation. So the first thing, of course, is that because when you're stressed, your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone, and that actually changes your body and causes disease. I want to submit to you that no matter how well you eat, and I love what Dr. Faith was saying earlier, but no matter how well you eat, no matter how much you exercise, if you are not able to really get stress under control, stress all by itself can destroy you. And one of the ways that stress does that is that it creates a tug of war with your mind and your body, with your desire to be healthy and your propensity to be unhealthy. One great physician, Dr. James Cal out in California, once said, your body will conspire to kill you. If you give yourself everything you want, your body will conspire to kill you. And so we have to make decisions to help to bring the body into subjection, as Paul says in 2 Corinthians 9:27. We have to bring our bodies into subjection because if we don't, it will rule over us and destroy us. And here's where it gets very powerful in the spiritual realm. One of the things we quote a lot in Slave Food Project is that stressed is desserts spelled backwards. Stressed is dessert spelled backwards. When you're stressed out, it actually Changes your affinity for foods that are high in salt, sugar, and fat, which is the evil triad of nutrition. Processed fats like oils, processed sugars, obviously, carbohydrates like sugars. And so salt, sugar, and fat are combined, can be very tasty. The food industry has mastered making these foods addictive, actually. And this is why they can say, bet you can't eat just one, or once you pop, you can't stop, because they know that their product is going to keep you coming back. And that's how they remain so profitable. The challenge for us as Christians, the challenge for any American, honestly, is if the food industry has a way to bring you back, and what they bring you back to makes you unhealthy, who benefits when you're unhealthy? Well, it is the health sector, or I should say the healthcare system, because it's really not a health sector. The healthcare system. There's billions of dollars being made from people eating these foods that are designed to keep them enslaved. Hence, we call it the slave food project. These foods are designed to keep you enslaved. And once you find a way to break that mold, you will be healthier. Your mind will clear, because what we've learned is when you eat lots of animal products, the carnitine in meat breaks down and becomes TMAOs. Dr. Batista mentioned that. These things cross the blood-brain barrier. In just a quarter pound of beef, there are over 100 million bacteria. Each bacteria has endotoxins, even after you've cooked it, even after it's soaked in the acid of your stomach. The endotoxins exist. And when they combine with the saturated fat in the meal, especially in the meat, and get to your colon, those endotoxins cross the barrier between your gut wall and your bloodstream. They go into your bloodstream, and they can cross your blood-brain barrier. So the toxins enter your brain. And there are a lot of ways that different toxins get into your brain, but when they do, they create inflammation. They create brain fog. They actually change the way you think. And why is that relevant to someone who is looking to be saved in these last days? One of the reasons that that is so relevant is because Isaiah 1:18 says, "Come, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool." You must be able to reason. That's why the Bible says that the drunk will not inherit the kingdom of God. Watch this. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 1-3 says it like this: when you sit to eat at a table of a ruler, consider what is set before you. And Solomon says in Proverbs 23, verse 2, if you be a man given to appetite, he says, to put a knife to your throat. That's what he says. And then he says, be not desirous of their dainties, for they are deceitful meat. Wow. He says, listen, be careful, because the food that the king of Babylon, which is why Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego later on, and he doesn't mention Babylon, obviously, Solomon, but when Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego sit at that table, they understand that the food is deceitful. In Matthew chapter 24 and verse 3, when the disciples asked Jesus, how will we know when the end of the world is? How will we know what is coming on the world? You know, he says something profound. He says, Jesus says, do not be deceived. The Greek word for deceived is do not be planeo. Do not be led away. What we eat will help to determine our ability to detect the deceptions of the last days. This is why Solomon also says, blessed is your land when your princes eat for strength and not for drunkenness. Powerful stuff. And that's why Paul warns us in Philippians chapter 3 and verse 19. He says, as he's describing these enemies of the church, he says that their God is their belly. When you start to put it all together, you understand that just as in the Garden of Eden, just as in the wilderness of temptation, that appetite is a key part of spiritual growth. And that's why it is such a challenge for so many of us, because you can eat for drunkenness, eat to remove stress, eat to try and get over the hump. But what Jesus calls us to do is have a transformed mind, to have a different mind. And it says it in Romans chapter 12 and verse 2, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Our minds must be transformed. Here's the whole weight of the matter. We should eat so that it is our minds are in the best condition to be transformed. Because what happens in the mind in the end? Revelation chapter 7, 1-3 tells us this, that the four angels are told to hold back the winds of strife in Revelation chapter 7, 1-2. Then a fifth angel comes on the scene and he says, don't let go of the wind until we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. What does that mean? The seal of the living God happens in your frontal lobe, in your prefrontal cortex, in the part of your brain that is at least part of the reward pathway, but it is the seat of reason. Remember Isaiah 1:18. What I am telling you is that in the end, how we eat will matter because it will help us to not be deceived. It will help us to not have false resources. It will allow us to connect to God in such a way that we are steadfast and unmovable in our relation to him. No, what you eat won't save you. Not eating right all by itself is not salvific. It won't save you. But eating wrong can cloud the mind, befuddle the senses, tarnish the morality, and cause you to make decisions that are going to affect your salvation. That's why Jesus said he is the bread of life. So when you understand this, you understand that we are called to live as Christ says live. And so it's not just about weight. It's not just about blood pressure and diabetes, although these are great markers for the fact that you're cleaning up your mind. If you can clean up the body, by default, the mind is being cleansed. And we must stay focused on this, no matter how many times we fall, right? Because a just man may fall 7 times, but he rises every time. As we move towards God, he will give us the strength to win the battle with appetite and live for Christ. Do not allow the world to transform your mind through their commercials for beer and meat and fast food and junk food. Don't let them transform your mind. But I want you to renew your mind and have your mind transformed to be like the mind of Christ, because that is what God is looking for. Blessings to all the alumni.
I remember taking a lot of trips to Walmart as I was growing up. My mother loved that place. I can still hear her as she entered her final years, calling me at 5 o'clock in the morning and saying, Donna, if you have plans to go to Walmart before the traffic gets heavy, I would love to go pick up a few things. I'll be ready when you get here. It's no wonder then that when faced with a life-altering medical diagnosis, I could depend on Walmart to find resources for my journey to better health. Whether it was to get a plant for the garden or my family room, exercise gear for my morning walks through the neighborhood, bath salts for my weekly hot soak, an inspirational book to read, a cast iron skillet or countertop appliance for cooking, herbs to boost my immune system, or recipe ingredients to cook up good health in a delicious dish. I could always get exactly what I needed. And today, 22 years after being told I would live only 2 to 5 years, I'm still finding resources at Walmart for my journey and referring my clients for resources on their journey too. Don't know what you've been taught about your health, but this I do know. Healthy lifestyle choices are the most underprescribed medical treatment for chronic disease. Yet, when prescribed and faithfully applied, they are the most powerful medical treatment available and have no negative side effects. I'm Donna Green-Goodman, health educator, breast cancer survivor, author, wife and mom, and lifelong bargain shopper. I teach health education and wellness at Lifestyle Therapeutix, your local Lifestyle for Better Health Center in Huntsville, Alabama. I do Wellness Wednesdays each week with Elizabeth Gentle on WAFF 48. You can follow me at Still Shoutin' on Instagram and Twitter. You can visit me at lifestyletherapeutics.com and watch me cook up health on our Lifestyle Therapeutics YouTube channel. I'm on a journey to better health, and I'd love for you to join me. And everything you need for your journey, from the garden to the grocery, is available at Walmart. Don't delay. Join us on the journey. It's time to get this party started.
Hey, Okay, we are at the end of together. Yes. Now, we're here. Y'all can stay and talk, walk around the building, ask us all kinds of questions, but we got to go for the people who are online. And what I do is challenge you. This is HBCU Homecoming Weekend, and HBCU education exposes you to a different lifestyle. I want you to use your HBCU education to make a difference in the lives that God sends your way. You have no idea who he's sending. If you have questions about anything that we talked about today or ideas, would like to connect with us, Dr. Petit chance to mention, but he and I and Walsh are part of Healthy Heart Nation. There's some really good things on with them, and we would love to connect with you. I saw Jack Jr. at the Centers for Disease. We hear from you. I want you to share this video over the holidays for people who are sick, for people who have any of the challenges that we talked about today. I want you to go to lifestylemedicine.org. Lifestyle. I'm talking to my schoolmates and y'all who have these degrees, but we're not practicing the great physician's way. I want you to follow our panel on social media. I want you to start making the changes yourself and plan to help somebody who needs assistance on their journey to better health. And then to lean on the original. They talk about the OG this and the OG that. Jesus is the original scientist. And I want you to lean on him so that he can guide you where you need to be. And like Ruby and I did, we can go in the Bible when Jesus people, they had to go to the temple to prove that they weren't sick anymore. Ruby and I had to go back to the doctor so they could do the and the Lord did what he was supposed to do. And so I'm challenging you to do that. Tell people about it. Share the video. Thank you for joining us so much. Continue to subscribe to everything that we have online. Have an amazing resurrection holiday, because remember, the tomb is empty. He has risen, and he wants to raise you from all the stuff that you've been generationally so that you can be free and set somebody else free. Have an amazing holiday. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.